Nothing gets but.
All right, everybody, we have Trista on the line. We're ready to get started, so if I can ask everybody to take your seats, please. Take your seats. All right, everybody, I hope you had a nice coffee, good break, and you know each other a little bit more. So as I mentioned before the break, we're sort of doing this progression from the very small studios, working our way up to Supercell, and now we have Xbox and Sony. We rolled dice or flipped a coin or did something, I'm sure, random to decide who was going to go before the other one. So we're not making any judgment as to which is bigger than the other, but we are delighted to have joining us from Redmond very early in the morning this morning. We have Trista Patterson, PhD, who is the Director of Sustainability for Xbox. And she's joined today by a special guest, Oscar, who's joining us from Legos. And we're going to have a bit of a fireside chat with Oscar as well. So guys, can you hear us?
Yes.
Awesome, we can hear you. So I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Nice to be here virtually with you all, to be able to see on this side of the camera. Hey Arno, nice to see you guys. We're there in spirit, you know, with all of the potentials with gaming and the ability to exact presence in our interaction. I know that you all in the room share our sense of potential and opportunity with respect to being in places together, working collectively on things together. And so in that regard, I feel very close to you as we're going through all of these topics this very early morning. I set my alarm at 1 a.m. to be sure that I could catch as many of you as possible. And so it's really, really nice to be here. I decided to flip the script a bit and invite a special guest for my session. So for the second half, we are going to do a fireside chat with Michael Oscar Ezio. Oscar has been really influential to Xbox in that maybe many of you have not had an opportunity to hear about. And so I thought I would give an opportunity for the rest of you to hear in real life some of the insights that Oscar has collected, and also hear from our side how influential that's been to us. So with that, I'm going to start off, and I'm not going to use any slides because you in the room are in a tiny text kind of a situation where if I do that, then I'm going to be about an inch high on your projector screen. And so I'll just stick with you here and speak off the cuff for a few different topics that I think are particularly relevant and that hopefully we can add in complement to the other areas that you'll be covering today with the other speakers. Namely, there's a lot to be said about gaming sustainability from the part of the organizations that create the devices on which gamers play on, and those are increasingly more diversified and made by more manufacturers all around the world. And also that special role there is coming from the larger organizations, and also the very big importance between public-private partnerships. So I thought I would touch on a few of those today. The, I think, loose working title of my talk today is called everything I ever really needed to know about gaming for sustainability, I learned in Africa from Africans and from all of my African colleagues at different African institutions. This is just to say that there are so many important principles and opportunities and experiences that are arising across the African continent that are so astounding and so inspiring and so important that it is incumbent upon each one of us that have the opportunity to elevate those voices and the diversity and be able to have others hear and be inspired by them. It's a great reason why I invited Oscar to speak to you today, because he's doing exactly that. I'm going to cover 3 points. One is that the first lesson I've learned is that the provenance and the consequence of consumer supply chains very often begin and end in Africa. I'm going to touch on the Consumer Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which is a piece of legislation going through the EU right now. And it's in a state of flux, a very important piece of legislation for those that are interested in gaming for sustainability. Second lesson that I've learned is that circular economy is innate to Africa. We have oftentimes been thinking of the way in which to promote sustainable development. Oftentimes that's taught in Northern cultures as something where maybe we need to leapfrog lesser developed countries into a new state of understanding. And in fact, in many cases, it's the opposite. One of the big projects I worked on just after we published the Playing for the Planet report was a summary of circular economy arising on the African continent. And the advancement of knowledge, the understanding of circular economy concepts, the cultural embeddedness of circular economy was so deep throughout all of the cases that were being reported by ACEN, the African Circular Economy Network, and the different practitioners that were being summarized in that report were so astounding to me that for me it has been really important to question when we are in northern and developed and more corporate environments and we hear the word "we can't," it's too difficult, it's too expensive. It is so important to learn through the experiences of others that are taking much more creative, much more culturally embedded, much more traditionally knowledge embedded approaches to solution making and question all of the assumptions in order to make a pathway forward. That point is particularly relevant to the 2030 roadmapping we've been doing in Xbox. And then lastly, the third lesson that I've learned is that in order to seize those opportunities, we really have to use the full diversity of Africa's unique perspective and diversity of experience to be able to see the opportunities that are right underneath our noses. And so with that, I'm going to speak about the sustainability toolkit and then open the floor to some of the questions that I have for Oscar, because the interplay between what Oscar was able to daylight for me came at a really critical time, without which I would not have been able to see very expansive opportunities within the Xbox ecosystem and thus help the team create impact that is now coming across in terms of emission savings worldwide. With respect to the first point, the Consumer Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, this is something that has been a policy piece that has been under development for quite some time. It came up for the first review within the EU for policy, very fast moving changes in January, and then in February, the evolution in the policy process came to a sharp halt. The way in which the EU sometimes works is that it must be considered during a certain period of time, after which then it's booted to the next policy round. In this case, speak for a moment about what that includes and why it's important for gaming for sustainability, but also for you to know that action on this particular item is important to gaming for sustainability because the delay leads to maybe a watering down of policy over time or delays in the execution and our ability to use those policy frameworks in order to further private practice and advancement. Currently, there is already legislation in the European Union that covers the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Many of you are familiar with how that relates to gaming in terms of the Scope 3 emissions. There's also coverage of green claims and ensuring that greenwashing doesn't happen. We know about that. But the CSDDD, as it's otherwise referred to, has some really unique characteristics. And specifically, there is reference to requiring companies to identify and address potential and risk to adverse human rights and environmental impacts, whether that relates to the operations or the subsidiaries, all through the value chain. That is really important because whenever in a corporate context we are using raw materials, then those raw materials have to come from somewhere. And the documentation of the provenance of where those raw materials have come from and the standards by which those raw materials have been extracted or treated is of very high importance, but oftentimes it is invisible from the purchasing mechanism. That is to say that even if a supplier wants to use those raw materials that are of a highest possible standard, it's very difficult to send a price signal out with reliability. Also, there are competitive considerations between different corporations. And so it really helps if in an international context, there is rules set about the kind of information that can be used and how they're used by different organizations. There is no place in the supply chain for gaming sustainability that has child labor, forced labor, or environmental crime. At this point, at this time, there is virtually no corporation that is using subsidiaries that are higher in the value chain that can guarantee with 100% certainty that those elements are not part of the supply chain. That is why this particular directive is so very important, but also you should know that it has been endorsed by
Yeah, I think we must face that just for a bit. Can you hear me?
That is not us.
Microsoft Office.
Yeah, but she should be joining back very shortly.
This is what happens when you get speakers to dial in from a third world country. It's also why we do use Microsoft Teams.
Okay, but whilst
Go ahead, Oscar.
I believe, yeah, she's here. She's still here. That's super. Okay, she just dropped the message saying she's here. Yes. Super. She's coming back. We should hear in a moment from her.
Just to maybe drop out, come back in.
Yeah, I think that's what she's doing.
Oscar, do you know any songs? Can you juggle? There we go. Hi,
How about
Tristan.
now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Did you catch any of that?
Yes.
All right, let me skim through the other pieces. At any rate, the CS has been put in pause. There is another very important possibility for renegotiation the week of March the 7th. The importance of this legislation cannot be understated for the quality of products that we can create, because it creates the impetus for everyone to look much higher in their value chain for the kinds of egregious practices that we all know that gamers do not want in their consumer products. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that I wanted to touch on opening the realm of possibility with respect to road mapping. So there is one thing I learned through the practices of examining circular economy is how important it is to suspend disbelief for at least a moment and to allow that exercise to help people imagine the future and the possibility that can unfold from that. The 2030 goals at Microsoft are enormously ambitious. They are amongst those that work closest with sustainability, something that is viewed as very, very challenging. And as a consequence, Leverage Lab, which is the group inside of Xbox that I created in order to scale sustainability. Currently, we have about 13 direct employees, but we have drawn off of 130 to create this roadmap. It was an effort to look more broadly, to discover opportunities in supply chain, in use phase emissions, and then the third group is in the design and materials in order to decarbonize toward the 2030 goals. That roadmap has now been completed, and I will say that regardless of whether or not each one of those actions that was identified in the roadmap is fully instituted, it opened the minds and the possibilities of everyone that was participating in that effort, both across Xbox ecosystems, as well as our partners all across the Microsoft system and other business groups. The third thing that I wanted to touch on when we think about sustainability, and this brings me to Oscar's contribution, is that in order to seize opportunities, we need to look for those that are oftentimes hanging out right underneath our noses. And with respect to gaming sustainability, one of the things that really bedeviled us was that the energy consumption that was being driven by the console was interwoven with the energy that was being driven by the operating system, which was interwoven by the energy consumption that was being driven by the game code, which was then interwoven by the energy consumption being driven by the consumer experience and the settings that they had in their console, which was also interlinked then with the greening of the grid, or the prevalence or absence of renewable energy with which the gamer had access to. And all of these things were knotted together. The teasing out of these different pieces was viewed as a very intractable program, a very intractable challenge, as well as much of the argument that I received when I first came to Microsoft was that the fronts of greening the console would not be particularly fruitful because the engineers had already optimized for everything they possibly could. The second piece was that greening code would not reveal savings because similarly, green coders were already maximizing the console, so there would not be gains to be found there. And so if I can ask Oscar to come on the screen, because it was Oscar actually, in sessions with Oscar in our different discussions, he had been facilitating with Africa Comicad. He is a creative entrepreneur, very active in many countries across Africa and facilitating perspectives from game developers and interactive creatives in so many different countries. And Oscar, we had I remember one very important session. We've done a number of them, but there was one very important one, and I remember you and I were sitting on the line, and you had facilitated gamers coming from all different African countries to talk about their experiences in game development and to ask questions and talk about their challenges. And there were examples of gamers who, or game developers who had challenging access to power, electricity. And so they would have to time certain parts of their processes depending on the reliability of their grid system. I remember one gentleman was moving his laptop from first the church, and then he would move over to another guy chimed in on the phone, and he said, I can wake up and I can restart my game development or be the bandwidth. Do you remember those meetings? And can you set the stage a bit more for the people in the audience about what those were about?
Yeah, definitely. I do remember those meetings, and developers across Africa still face these challenges, especially in sub-Saharan Africa. This is something a lot of developers face. And that was, I believe, that was right before the Green Game Summit in 2021-22. That was during the eAfrica Challenge, where we had something to do with sustainability. And you then introduced the game developers across Africa, the mind-blowing concept, which was green coding. It stuck with me since then. We've been looking on how to build upon that knowledge. But game developers struggle, just like all the software developers as well. Access to power and resources like that, it's not evenly distributed to everyone. And so people have find really amazing opportunities or initiatives. They have to have amazing initiatives, I can put it that way, to see how to solve their power problems. And due to this, from that conversation, we came to realize that a lot of people were not aware of how their energy usage or the sources of the energy they use is also affecting to the economy, to the society, to the climate. But hearing from you, getting those insights, those research, we also came to see that if the developers were aware, they were more willing to be a part of the solution and not just the problem. And that's why something like this is very important for us to continue having dialogue, to educate people on how their actions can affect the environment. Yeah. You're muted, Tristan.
Thanks. This was such a great and formative conversation for me, because when Oscar and I were having these discussions, I remember it was immediately the next day that I went back into Xbox and I insisted that we reevaluate the protocols that were being created for our code of conduct. So as to the way in which the timing and the size of updates was being governed on the Xbox system. And when I went back in, I was making the claim that if we didn't look closely at that we would be looking at both a spike of energy as well as spike of bandwidth that was unnecessary and potentially offered opportunities for optimization. At that point in time, the engineering system thought that these differences were so subtle that it was not worth investigating, not worth taking engineering resources in order to quantify and optimize. But the case that was being made, or that I was able to make by speaking with Oscar and learning from his examples, that this was effectively an accessibility issue. Not everyone has access to the most prevalent power in terms of energy or renewable energy or bandwidth all around the world. And if Xbox wanted to walk the talk in terms of accessibility and inclusivity, then it was incumbent upon us to investigate that kind of quantification and what we could do to make it more possible for more developers to access more of those services in a way that was as streamlined as possible. Another thing that Oscar's respondents were talking about kind of power that was being consumed on the end devices. So you can imagine on a mobile phone, if you're trying to release a game and you can't tell how much differences in code might increase the battery drain on the end user's device, then that will really limit playtime. It will limit the amount of downloads that are received for your game and so on. And I remember Oscar's audience talking about how that was something they didn't have a lot of information about, and how they really wanted more information about the power consumption of their games while the games were running, as well as while they were being downloaded, and how that affected their ability to game for longer in more places. This too reinforced my ability and insistence that Xbox go back and design the kinds of systems that allowed us to look at the power consumption in-game, and also the different features in code that led to complications of code that one layer after another cluttered up the code such that it was creating energy draw that did not directly lead to consumer benefit. So that is to say, if you add layers of code one after another, sooner or later you will have excessive energy consumption without additional benefit. Oscar, I just really wanted you to be on this call because I wanted to express to you my deep, deep gratitude for you to have facilitated that listening session, because this, and I want everyone in the room to understand how deep this has been in terms of impact on the way I was approaching things internal to Xbox. There were hundreds of engineers inside Xbox telling me there were not savings to be gained. And what I was hearing from Oscar's peers was that there were stones left unturned. We were not examining all of the assumptions that we had. That moment, Oscar, was so important, and I want to tell you directly that this led to the entire emergence of the sustainability toolkit and documentation at Xbox. This was an insight that was for Oscar and everyone that contributed to that hive mind approach, and that allowed me to listen with appreciation to the challenges and difficulties, because the quantitative impact of this. One case, for example, when we greened code and we brought suggestions to Epic to apply them in-game, in Fortnite, led to the savings of, in a single calendar year, the prevention of the equivalent of 190 million car miles worth of emissions. And that was just on Xbox platform alone. We also were putting out changes to game code that also can help all other devices in the efficiency that's played there. So these kinds of insights are so powerful and important, and that conscious listening is so critical. And I just really thought it was really important for you to be here, Oscar, and just hear and have everyone hear how important you were to that moment, because in every group there's a spark. In every voice, and especially people like Oscar that are able to cultivate and be able to listen, and you do so much volunteer mentorship, Oscar. I wonder if you could say a few words about the work that you're doing now in mentorship and cultivation, and with Africa Kamikade in lifting the voices for needs of creatives across the continent, and the way in which they are barriers that they might have to resources, and what other needs you're hearing from the field so that we can do more to remove those barriers in the future.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Trista. I'm really humbled into that. Yeah. And yeah, a big thanks to you and your team as well. For those who might not really get because it was also beneficial for the game developers to learn about green coding. Coming to understand that it's about the way you write your code. The way you write your code will determine the amount of energy consumption for your code. And ideally, for a lot of game developers right now, what a bulk of people are looking out for is monetization. But getting this insights to know that it can not just even affect energy consumption, but even affect download size, affect our update size, and so many more was really helpful to them. And I could see Arnold there. Arnold was also super. You brought Arnold on board to share the climate change developers field guide, which is amazing. Anyone there should reach out to Arnold and get access to that. We're still trying to decode that book, and it's super. But these little things might not look like they're important, but working towards a sustainable future for everyone, not just in terms of profitability, but to have a circular economy that we can all benefit from, this whole process was very important. For us at Africa Communicate, we are building basically the launchpad for stakeholders in the African video games, immersive and interactive media industry. And it's really about sustainability, looking at how the studios can become more profitable, but also how they can, in the process, give back and empower more people, empower their society, empower other stakeholders that want to join. So we have fellowship programs where we're training people how to build games. We have fellowship programs where we're training game studio founders to become entrepreneurs, better entrepreneurs, and the business of game development. And this was something that also cut in directly with what we did with you with respect to green coding. And then above all, one exciting thing that directly fits in is the eAfrica Challenge, which is the Evolve Africa Challenge, where we are telling these game developers, you're not just a creative, you're so much more. You can use your creativity to make change, to create impact. You look at games like, or you look at game studios like Green Quest, you look at game studios like K4 Games, like Free Lives. Free Lives released Terra Nil some months back. K4 Games just last month released Blue Gecko, which is a game telling people, trying to educate the audience about illegal, the way they get animals, exotic animals, illegal trade of these animals. Terra Nil was about the environment. Green Quest is a game about climate change, so that as children play the game, they get to learn about the climate around them, how they can be a part of the solution. Same with K4, which released Clean Beach. I believe it was Clean Beach, which when you play the game, it educates you about why you should keep your beach clean, and then they plant trees in your name. These are the amazing initiatives these game developers across Africa are getting involved in. And with conversations like this, we can support them. It's not just about how the studios can make more money, it's also about how they can make impact. And the beauty for us is we're a young emerging market. So this is the best time for us to bring these initiatives in and grow along. So we encourage everyone to connect, see how we can work together, and see how we can grow the African video games industry. Thanks so much, Tracy. Yeah.
So great to hear from you, Oscar. Thank you so much. So to recap, provenance and consequence of consumption begins and ends in Africa. If we're not looking to the full scope of the value chain, we are not understanding what sustainability in gaming actually is. Second of all, circular economy is innate in Africa, and in order to get there, we need to suspend our disbelief in order to explore potential to its full possibility. And lastly, we need also to hear for that diversity of experience, the diversity of application, the diversity of perspective, without which we are not turning every stone on the climate front. And it is a two-way street. It is a wonderful collaboration, and it's really worthwhile. Thank you so much, Oscar, for all you've given to us in terms of your knowledge and your time, and given to so many in terms of mentorship and contribution more broadly. You are an absolute powerhouse, and it's a privilege to work with you. Have a great afternoon.
What a great conversation. Thank you so much, Oscar and Trista, both of you. Just, a couple of notes to say that the two of the games that Oscar mentioned, Terra Nil and Electric Blue, are both upstairs if you want to check. They're both in the kiosks. They're great examples, and they're both African-made games, and we're delighted to show them. So thank you for mentioning those, Oscar. Also, Trista, I'm so happy to hear that you think the world of Oscar. Know that, please, that we also do, And Oscar was actually featured literally yesterday in Games Industry Africa. There's a whole feature article about him. So if anybody wants to go read that, it came out yesterday, and the whole Africa Game Developer WhatsApp group is all buzzing about Oscar today. So it's great that we had him on today, and thank you so much. And then lastly, just there's an expression that came out of the physical ability world, if you will, that it says nothing about us without us, and we're so delighted that you're living that yourself with Xbox and with your efforts there, and including African voices to make sure that your strategies are relevant for our markets, and we appreciate you. So thank you for joining today.
Thanks so much for having us. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Awesome.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye-bye. So we are running a little bit behind. So unfortunately, I do have to apologize, Josh and Sonia. I'm sorry, we've run out of time. We're not going to have time for you today. Come on up. I'm joking. So Josh is here from PlayStation. He's flown in just for this, and he's going to talk about Sony's efforts with the Climate Station, which will be on display this week at the UN Assembly. And it's an amazing effort, and Josh, we can't wait to hear about it. So let me hand over to you. Yep. We have technology. Where are you going? What's that?
Thanks very much. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thanks very much for inviting me. It's my first time in Nairobi as well. A little bit about me. So I've been now at Sony Interactive Entertainment for this is my 11th year now. And I started off my PhD research was sponsored by Sony in looking at the carbon emissions of our products and services. And that sort of led to a lot of the research and work we've done to estimate our organisational impact. And now I work in our ESG team, and our focus on sustainability sort of follows three principles. Forge a path, not just follow, and I think that's sort of particularly important when you have a unique industry and unique products to avoid unintended consequences. Turn intention into action, and I hope in this presentation we can look at some of the progress that we've made at Sony, and to do the right things and do them well. And so overall our focus is to inspire change, drive progress, and to create impact beyond gaming. So as well as some of the progress that we made on environment, I would like to show you some of the ways we're using our technology to inspire change. So at Sony Interactive, we're part of Sony Group, and our environment goals include Road to Zero. So Road to Zero looks at climate change, resource conservation, management of chemical substances, as well as the promotion of biodiversity. And I mentioned in my role, I look a lot at carbon impact, and we have a commitment to, with the Science Based Targets Initiative, to achieve net zero carbon emissions by 2040. And that includes all of the use of our products. So this graph here actually shows the carbon footprint over the last 5 years for all of Sony products. And to give you some sort of aspect of scale, for PlayStation consoles last year, it was approximately 5 million tons estimated impact for the lifetime of those products when they're sold. So estimate around use for 8 years. And the good news is that our targets cover those emissions. So we have to, by 2030, reduce our carbon emissions from the use of our products by 45%. And understanding how to estimate organizational impact is really a key step on that journey to net zero. And that's why we're really proud to contribute to the Playing for the Planet Alliance guidance for reporting and estimating greenhouse gas emissions within the industry. A document that Sam mentioned at the start of the day. So definitely download that. It's really good guidance. Now I'll share some of the progress that we've made that are specifically on our environmental goals, starting with our products and services. So energy efficiency is really key and important. We always consider energy efficiency when designing products, and we've made a lot of progress on consoles. But with PSVR2 launch, we improved the power management of that compared to its predecessor. And so by default, the display turns off to save energy when not worn. And it also automatically powers down when not in use. We're also supporting the transition of our data centers to renewable energy. And last financial year, around 70% of the electricity consumed by the servers that are on our PlayStation cloud streaming service came from renewable and low carbon sources. And then we purchased offsets from the gold standard to sort of cover the remaining 30%, so around 5,500 tons CO2. And also all of our main office sites in Japan, the UK, and US also use renewable electricity. Looking at resource use, we're looking at efforts to reduce plastics in our product packaging. And PSVR2 launched with 98% fiber-based packaging materials. And we're also looking at our peripherals as well. So we have the DualSense Edge uses paper hanger tabs, for example, and we're phasing out any plastic hanger tabs in our peripherals. And if we go back further, PS5 launched with similar content on fiber-based packaging. But also in our products, we're trying to incorporate more recycled content. And so our game boxes worldwide last year contained around 14% recycled polypropylene from post-industrial sources. And we're reevaluating that now, and it's increased again. So this is some of the things we've done specifically on environment for our products. But I think one of the main aspects of Playing for the Planet is to utilize, and everyone's touched on this, the power and the reach that gaming has. And so we want to, as a family member of Playing for the Planet, we believe our technology also has that power to inspire change. And so some things that we've done include, last year for the second year in a row, we used the PS4 and PS5 platforms to help encourage gamers to support the United Nations Play for Forests campaign. And this time, 23 million notifications were sent to users across all those platforms. It was open and read by 1.5 million gamers. We're still doing the tally on it. We think that led to around 80,000 additional signatures to the pledge. In the 2022 Green Game Jam, challenged members of the Alliance to create activations on the theme of forest restoration. So on top of supporting wildflower meadows and planted in the UK, as well as restoration of seagrass in Canada, Our Horizon Forbidden West activation led to the planting of, we planted over 600,000 trees across the US, Germany, New Zealand, and Brazil. And we call it Aloy's Forest, who's the character in Horizon. And we're keen to not just leave it there, we monitor and grow Aloy's Forest. So I have an update video taken a year on from that. So
it's been more than 1 year since the launch of Gorilla's Horizon Forbidden West, featuring Aloy on her quest to restore balance to planet Earth. Like Aloy, we have also embarked on a quest to help protect nature and biodiversity. To bring life to Aloy's world, we took inspiration from nature and ecosystems in the real world.
For Horizon Forbidden West, we were inspired by the beautiful epic nature that we find on the west coast of the United States. And it gave us a lot of opportunity to create environments that are very lush, majestic, powerful, and fun to explore.
For Horizon Forbidden West, we always start with inspiration from real plants, and you kind of like try to capture the essence of the nature.
When you start working as a vegetation artist, you start seeing nature very differently and you notice the small little details.
The World Wildlife Fund estimates that global populations of mammals, fish, birds, reptiles, and amphibians have declined by 69% on average since 1970. Sony Interactive Entertainment has partnered with global organizations on reforestation and restoration projects around the world as part of our commitment to the United Nations Playing for the Planet Alliance to raise awareness of the importance of biodiversity. We're eager to show you what's been accomplished since Aloy's latest adventure began in February 2022. Through our various PlayStation projects, over 600,000 trees have been planted globally, and an estimated 1,800 acres restored, along with additional seagrass and meadow planting efforts. The UN Playing for the Planet Alliance set a target of 1 million trees in 2022. Our result? Together, the gaming industry planted 2.5 million trees overall. We'd like to thank our conservation partners for their tireless work to protect Earth's ecosystems and for making the Forest of Aloy a reality.
Jeder kann einen Beitrag leisten. Das sind doch kleine Hilfen, kleine Unterstützung wirklich gut und wirklich notwendig.
Trees play an essential role in supporting biodiversity and the health of precious ecosystems. At the Arbor Day Foundation, we're proud to work with Sony Interactive Entertainment to use trees to maintain a resilient planet for all.
We've been able to gradually start transitioning away from that grazing and into planting with natives.
This partnership has allowed us to build back once lost connectivity within BC's Blue Carbon Sinks, which play an essential role in the fight against climate change and to restore biodiversity in coastal habitats.
Well, it's a really exciting partnership between Eden Project and PlayStation because it's playful and it's creative and it's putting wildflowers where they should be and putting them in the public eye, in the spotlight.
Gaming has the power to inspire change. We plan to go further. Learn more about Sony Interactive Entertainment's environmental initiatives on sonyinteractive.com.
Also, in the our studio's Media Molecule created content for the previous Green Game Jams on those themes, and the game Dreams, where users can create their own games. Over 700 people in the Dreams community created games on those themes. But we're also keen to better understand how games as a media can be used to inspire action on environment. And so we're also engaged in two ongoing projects with the University of Oxford, who look to understand how user behaviour and choices within games can lead to environmental action. So we hope to be able to share that knowledge once that research has been complete with you, and maybe develop guidance for developers in the future. And I'm really pleased to be able to share with you our update on Climate Station. So we demonstrated this at INEA there to this week, and we took this also to COP28. And this is our kind of contribution to help sort of solve issues on climate change. And our journey here started with the inauguration of the Playing for the Planet Alliance. And Sam already showed the slide introducing where Jim Ryan and Bill Spencer stood up and made the commitment to the Alliance. And we really wanted to use our expertise in immersive and interactive entertainment to help bring this challenge of climate change to the front for our audiences. Now, as game makers, we connect with our audiences through engaging immersive stories, and we're used to taking vast, complex data sets, such as like performance capture of an actor, and turn them into beautiful visualizations. So we empower like our audience by giving them the agency, and this was really spoken about in the bulletin as well. Games give people agency to make choices through making the stories personal and relevant to everyone who plays them. So the challenge was then, how do we apply this same expertise to climate change? How do we take that complex data behind the climate science and make it relatable and accessible to everybody? And can we give our huge community of players and the families the tools to understand climate change, its effect on them and our future? And can we educate millions of players around the world to make a difference? So our solution has been Climate Station, which is an innovative exploration of climate change data, telling the story in 3 different acts, looking at past observations, where we are in the present, and then future projections. And we really start here in weather year, which tells the story of our planet through a complete year. And it shows just how finely balanced the interconnected weather and climate systems are on our planet. Then we open up observations, allowing you to explore over 120 years worth of climate data, and it's mapped over 20,000 points on the globe. So you can see just how much the climate has changed, and importantly, the factors that are causing it. You can see that from anywhere on the planet, so your home, where you grew up, and see exactly how it's changed. But importantly, at the touch of a button, we can see how much you can see what future projections might also look like. So here, we've taken the latest IPCC data reports, and using the game and visual effects tools, we processed all that data and modeled it across the 5 future warming scenarios. This allows us to easily understand just how those models and climate change will affect local and global temperatures through to flooding, drought, wildfires, biodiversity loss, and many other factors. And really, what's really insightful is for the first time ever, we brought together the main climate change indicators. And we mapped them like this, so you can see, compare the different warming scenarios. I think some of these impact categories have never been mapped on the globe like this. So we can really see what those warming milestones look like and compare them across 1.5 degrees, 2 degrees, and 4 degree scenarios. It just shows you very quickly across these different factors. You gain a lot of information that you might not from reading those really thick IPCC reports. To help really understand this complex data and theory, work with world-leading experts and science communicators to provide over 2 hours of engaging multimedia explainers that look at everything from greenhouse gas emissions to deforestation, coral bleaching to air currents, ocean heats to storms. And then we've also been able to use the real immersive power of 3D visualization gaming technology to bring to life these impacts. So we've got never before seen recreations here of ice coverage loss in the Arctic. It's laid across you in virtual reality. To the tragic devastation caused by hurricanes. Here we have the aftermath of Dorian in the Bahamas. And it makes events that seem, they may seem distant and remote to some, but when they occur far away from you, they feel viscerally real when you're looking at them in your own home. Our journey doesn't end there. So as a company whose mission is to inspire and fulfill curiosity, we know that putting all this data in the hands of lots of this many people will lead to extraordinary things. And because of the amount of data that Climate Station contains, we know that everybody who uses it is likely to discover something new, something important, something that matters to them. Whether it's how the climate has changed across their lifetimes, or how it might evolve across their grandchildren's lifetimes, or whether the decisions that policymakers make today will impact them there tomorrow. Everyone's going to have their own story to tell. And they can share that immediately with others using the PlayStation Share function. And it will let people share their own climate story. Climate Station will release this year for free across all PlayStation platforms. So I hope everyone has a chance to use it, not just VR. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Josh. I can't wait to see Climate Station this week at UNEA. It seems like a hugely important project, but also hugely depressing, probably. but it's so exciting that you're sharing it with all PlayStations. That's fantastic. So thank you for joining us for this. Any quick questions? We're short on time, so yeah, come on up.
Hi Josh, my name is Aminza. I work at the Museum for the UN. Just one simple question. Is Climate Station gamified in any way?
So everyone can explore through Climate Station on their own. The demonstration that we've got is like a 5-minute demo. So you can't really look at things individually. But when it's launched, you'll be able to explore it in its totality. It's more of an educational application. It's actually the first of its kind that we've ever developed. So not as a kind of traditional game like we focus on.
Version 2.
And to the point as well on the kind of doom and gloom side, you can see the warming scenarios and how they might impact and how bad it can get. But we also show, if we course correct, how things can turn out. So there's a message of hope in Climate Station. If we do that quickly, we can turn things around. You can see that there. We hope that that's conveyed equally as what might happen in the worst case.
Oh, that's awesome. That's really awesome. Yeah, Gautam, go ahead.
Yeah, I have so many questions. I'll try to keep most.
Josh will be around, right? You're sticking around tomorrow as well. So.
Okay. Well, it's just two right now. One is, who's your intended audience? Like, how are you kind of? I know that you're making it available to everybody, but who are you really targeting? And two is, can you make biodiversity?
Great questions. We really do hope that everybody will try it. But we also hope that we can impact policymakers, which is why we've been at these events and developed it with the UN. I think when we've demonstrated it so far, and we have had a lot of educators say, "I love this in schools and in museums," but equally we've had feedback from policymakers that, "Wow, we failed. We need to go further." So I hope that it reaches those high impact people who make decisions. equally as everybody who can just try it in their home. And like I said, I think the really interesting thing is that because of all that data contained in it, all mapped across 20,000 points, people will discover new things that haven't been seen or published before. That's what's really exciting. Maybe you don't know where that will come from, but certain that there will be new things to say. And in terms of biodiversity station, we've got the biodiversity impact factors in the milestones of the warming milestones already. I'd love to talk to you more about what that might look like. But so far, it's focused on the IPCC reports and showing the global temperature mapping. But we have those impact factors to explore as well.
Certainly, I think flying to Nairobi, displaying this at the UN, you're going to reach the policymakers this coming week, and it'll be fascinating to see what sort of response you get. So thank you so much, Josh, for joining us today for the Game Summit. You know, we've talked a lot today about the massive reach of the gaming audience. How amazing is it that the top two console makers both are so committed to being net zero, to making projects to raise awareness around these issues? Imagine like the top two banks in the world, or the top two oil and gas companies, whatever, making the same kind of commitments, right? How amazing is it that the two gaming companies are doing so? So thank you, Josh. Thank you guys also as an audience. You've been so patient today. We're down to like the last two talks. I know it's been a long day. I want to do a really quick poll for just 1 second. Everybody here who has ever played a game on a PlayStation, stand up. Okay, stay standing. Now, everybody who's ever played a game on an Xbox, stand up. All right. Now, while you're standing, do the hokey pokey, shake yourself, shake your arms, get yourself awake. All right, we're down to the last two. Okay, you can say that now. I promise you, at the end of these two, we're going to do the draw for the prizes. We have a special giveaway for everybody. Then we have an amazing Italian dinner. And we have the DJ Andy who's coming in. We're going to have some cool music tonight. So you've done a great job so far. We're almost at the end, at the finish line. Thank you guys. Now, yesterday, Franziska from Google hosted a great roundtable talking about gaming in Africa, what our needs are, what's gone right, what's gone wrong, what's in the future. And I'm so thankful that at that discussion yesterday, we had our next speaker join us. Evans Kragu, who is the founder of Meccan Games, published an amazing game that he's going to tell you all about today. Came through the Crazy Labs Accelerator program in South Africa, is now published by Crazy Labs. Can I say #1 game in 27 markets around the world, 27 countries around the world. He's going to tell us how he did it, what it means for Africa, and why gaming in Africa is so important. So thank you, Evans, also for your patience waiting for us today, and we'll help you get set up. Do you need sound? You're good? All right.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Evans Kirabu. That took a lot longer to set up than I thought, but I'm going to talk to you about a success story from Kenya. My name is, as I said, Evans Kirabu, and I run a studio called Mekan Games. I'm the founder and also the CEO. My background is mainly in tech, but over the last couple of years, I've delved a bit more into the business of gaming, and so that's kind of like the space that I currently operate in. So, the team. So I'm going to touch a bit on who the team is and what exactly we do, and a bit of our story. Currently, the team is just about 8 members. The team is based here in Nairobi, but we do have some members that are working from Lagos. Our journey starts way back in 2016. At that time, we were making a ton of different games: PC, mobile, casual, VR, AR, pretty much all over the spectrum that is gaming. And then about 3 years ago, we decided to narrow in on hyper-casual and hybrid games. Hyper-casual and hybrid games. For context, for anyone who's not aware what a hyper-casual game is, these are basically the super simple games that you play when you're waiting for your rice to cook or when you're stuck in traffic. They require very minimal commitment, and it's games that you enjoy over like the split seconds that you have to spare throughout the entire day. Over the last 3 years, we've made over 110 games and prototypes, all in all leading up to one of the biggest hits that have ever come out of Africa, which was The President, currently doing around 22 million downloads all over the world. All right, touching a bit more into why hyper-casual and what it is. Right here I have a simple graph with no numbers. And what I'm trying to explain is the role that hyper-casual games play in the gaming industry as a whole. This is very important because it touches on green games as I proceed with my presentation. The way we like to think about it is that hyper-casual games are the starting point of to be gamers in future. So we have super simple games which get millions of downloads. And as you're playing these hyper-casual games, that's when the casual and the hybrid casual studios market to you the games that they're making. You probably download that casual game and start playing it, or that hybrid casual. As you're playing that game, you probably get introduced to a mid-core game that you'll start playing over time. And then, all in all, a very small portion of those who start out playing hyper-casual games end up in the PC console space. So this graph over here is representing downloads, and then how that spans out across different genres of games. Right. So, The President. The President was released in September of 2022. It has since then done a lot more than we thought it would. At the point of release, it was the top game in some of the major markets in the world. It's okay to be the top game in 27 countries, but to hit the top spot in the largest mobile markets in the world is no mean feat. So we hit the #1 spot in the US, the United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, and a bunch of the rest of those other countries, the 23 countries missing on that list. As a result, the game ended up winning Game of the Year Africa 2022, the most impactful game, and DP of the Year as well. The Game Industry Africa Awards. The Game Industry Africa Awards are not as big as the Grammys, but it's as big as we get in Africa. So that's what I should mention. Sorry?
Better fashion.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. At the point of release, we were doing around 50,000 daily downloads, and we got a ton of press from pretty much all over the world, from Bloomberg to TechCrunch, anyone else who was interested in talking about our game. Most notably, the game did rank higher than Candy Crush, than Diablo. This was the same week that Diablo was released as well. And then many other games that are played all over the world for the 2 weeks that we were famous. And then the marketing budget overtook ours in the new. All right. So why is this important? The work that I do on a normal 9 to 5 is focused on getting as many people to play our games as possible. As a studio, the only way we are profitable is if we have millions of people playing our games. If we have 1,000, 2,000 people playing, it doesn't make sense to us, and that's a general sense of how hyper-casual works. So that's the angles I'm going to take with my presentation. How do we get more people to play green games? And I'm going to highlight some of the hacks that we use, and I believe they're very important for anyone out there who's designing games or anyone else who might be thinking of getting into that particular space. All right, so I'm going to touch a bit on Africa. Africa is a very, very interesting place. And depending on who you talk to, they're either very optimistic or very optimistic. So we are all very optimistic about it. And I'm going to do a bit of numbers behind games. So on your far left top corner is the North America situation when it comes to smartphone subscriptions. These are basically the active smartphones that exist in the market. At the moment, we are roughly at around 352 million. This is estimated to climb to 377 million by around 2030. We're working with 2022 to 2030, so these numbers are definitely slightly different given we're in 2024. If we look at Europe, we're doing around 496 million, looking to go up to 507 million. Before I get into Africa, I want us to look a bit more into the numbers that are there. In North America, by the time we get to 377 million, that will be at 91% penetration. In Europe, that will hit about 92% penetration. Now, Africa, as I've said, is a very unique situation. At the moment, we're doing around 489 million, and this is expected to go up to 692 million, depending on your source. We do have some sources citing it around 800 million as well. And even when we do hit the 692 million mark, we'll still be at only 50% penetration. So there's still a lot more people that are going to get onto smartphones. So what's fueling all this? There's a ton of things. If we look at the transition that's happening between the currently very common feature phones, we have users that are now only getting into smartphones and therefore driving this huge change. And then on top of that, we have some of the biggest companies all over the world that make smartphones, realizing that the African audience would be able to pick up smartphones a lot quicker if they were cheaper. So right now in Kenya, in Africa, I believe, if you were to generalize, if you have, let's say, $30, you have a good enough phone to play some of the best games out there, at least on a mobile scale. Right. So moving on to my next slide. Hyper casual plus Africa plus green games, which is basically what I've gone through up to this point. Hyper casual games do well over 10 billion downloads and players in any given year. Last year, we did 12.3 billion. And these games that are inherently designed to appeal to as many people as possible. And as we've seen, Africa is particularly in a position where over the coming 3 years, we'll have a huge uptake of people coming into the mobile market, right? So in my view, and the view of many others in the room, if we want people to play green games, by all means possible, we need to think big because the numbers are growing really big. Right now, if I have a green game and I have maybe 1,000 people playing, and then in 2030, we'll have over 200 million only Africans coming on board, my 1,000 needs to be a lot more for me to make an impact. I'll give the example of the green jump that's going to happen soon. We require, or we'd expect that for those who are playing the game to actually take an action and plant a tree. And this only means that the more people we have playing the game, the higher the chances of this particular thing happening. So if we have 200 million people coming on to smartphones, we need to reach as many as those so that we have as many trees as possible planted. And that's just one example. So I'm going to go through 3 particular points. These are some of the tricks that we use to target as many people as possible to play our games. And I surely do hope that they are as equally insightful and can possibly be used in many other genres of games, not just green games as well. So this will be keeping in mind that green games have to be fun. I think we talk a lot about the message and the action that we want people to take, and more often than not forget that games have to be fun. This is entirely because the gaming industry as a whole is insanely competitive. If anyone is aware of how the mobile space works, I assume most of us are, it is insane, the amount of competition that is there. And the one thing that puts you ahead of your competition is how much fun your game is. And so it leaves us with no chance. Green games also have to be fun, otherwise no one is playing them and no one is taking any real life action to do anything. And then I'll also touch a bit more on thinking about a mass market approach when designing green games. And lastly, just a little bit of how intense market testing, iteration, and prototyping cycles have to be for this to be achieved. So, in 2023, well over 14,000 games were released on Steam. If we look at the Google Play Store, we're doing around 500 to 900 games released every single day. If we look at the Apple Store, it's around 400 to 800 games every single day. For the average studio, you're probably going to pump out maybe one game a year. And so that one game is up against a lot of competition. Now, it even gets more tricky if it's a green game that's not fun. Things are going to look really bad. I guarantee you're just going to be gathering webs in the stores because the next day we'll have well over 2,000 games placed above yours. And so it's very important that we have this in mind as we're thinking of the different ways that these games can be designed. Not to make things worse, there are more and more platforms coming up where people can play games. Pretty sure maybe some of you have played games on TikTok. TikTok is looking to get into gaming and in a really big way. Netflix games are all over now. And so is Snapchat. I don't know if they're still doing it. And these are just some of what is on the mainstream media. If you look at smaller markets, everyone is looking into games, from the telcos to anyone who has any form of interactive app. All right, so it's very important that we think about these numbers and we think about it from an angle where when you're designing your game, just have it in mind that it's probably going to fail. And so what you're trying to do is look at these numbers and think about what can I do to give it the best chance against the many other games out there that are equally as fun. And well, this is interesting. I have two images here, but right before I get into them, I just want to mention as well that if we think about players overall as agents and as humans who like to enjoy any form of interactive media, for you to get someone to play a game, in this case a green game, genuinely, if we're being honest with ourselves, we have to meet them where they're at, right? The best case scenario, the best picture I can paint is someone just came off of playing Fortnite. So they are jacked with a lot of adrenaline pumping through their veins. And so whatever I'm presenting to them as an alternative form of entertainment that will potentially result in them taking an action in real life has to equally give them the same feeling and drive a positive message that the other game wasn't. It's very important that we keep this in mind. So when it comes to designing games that are mass market, that will appeal to the over 200 million people that are about to get on smartphones in Africa alone, and the many millions that will do so globally, I want to highlight something very simple that we have on the screen. So on the screen, we have a super simple, half-cooked, half-fried stickman. And then on the other hand, we have a very well sterilized character who's looking really good. So for the purpose of the slide, we're going to call him John. The guy who's looking good, we're going to call him John. And then this guy, we're just going to call him a stick figure. Before I move on to the next slide, I just want to highlight that the reason why I've given John certain attributes is because of the way he looks. There's a lot that we can derive from John, right? We can tell he's male. We can tell is probably some sort of an adventure of sorts. It looks very rugged. I automatically assume there's something he does for a living. And if I look at this character over here, there's not much I can tell about him. He's just definitely some kind of a humanoid. Moving on to the next slide, just to emphasize what I've said. The character with a blue background has no race, has no gender, religion, socioeconomic status, and no emotions. And these are some of the things that we think about when you think about a huge audience of people that we want to appeal to. If my game that I'm aiming to get 50 million downloads, 100 million downloads, if the characters in the game are not as diverse as they can be, then I'm definitely alienating a huge portion of my potential player base. And we've seen many games out there, specifically hyper-casual games, use this trick to try and get as many people playing as possible. And I can tell you from an experience point of view, the difference is drastic. Not only are they simple characters and simple to understand what they're doing and what the message is, there's one thing they do really, really well, and this is they tend to not distract the player from the mission and the main message. Allow me to explain a bit more what I mean by this. If I'm playing a green game, there's definitely a message and an agenda that this game is trying to achieve, right? However, all this can be heavily clouded behind the artwork, the character, and the overall feel of the game. If I'm playing with John from the previous slide, and John is trying to plant trees, and he's on a mission to plant 1 million trees in the game, it's very easy for the mass market. By mass market, I mean people between the ages of, 5 all the way to 70. It's very easy for them to feel like that's John's work. That's John, and that's what John is supposed to do. But the real thing we're trying to communicate here is that's your job as the player. And so instead of making John be the main character, we give you this very generic character that you can easily relate to, and you can project all that you are into this individual. I've gone a lot more deeper on that than it seems on the surface, but truly making such simple design decisions goes a long way to make sure that a lot of people are playing your games. And a good example is a game called Life Bubble. Life Bubble is a game that was released around, let's say, beginning of last year. To date, it has over 10 million players globally, with well over 50% of users coming back to play the game. And if we look at the game, it seems very green, and no pun intended. But there's a lot of green going on, a lot of trees. But most importantly, I want us to focus on the character who's in the game. And the character, the only thing we can tell from him is that he's probably in some wasteland somewhere trying to rehabilitate the land. But other than that, there's nothing else we can tell. We can't tell if he's male, female, if he's rich, if he's poor, whatever religion he's from. And it's very important to do that because as a player is playing this game, they feel like it's them that's doing all this work. However, if we had John doing all this, that's John's work, right? All right. So, I'm fine now, okay. And there are limitations, I'll admit, to this kind of approach. This is designing games for pretty much anyone out there in the world. If you're aiming to get 100 million people to play your game, there are things you're going to run into. This is a good example. At the moment, Kenya, where we're at, roughly around 90% of our energy comes from renewable sources. This is expected to climb all the way to somewhere around 95% by 2030. And so, in effect, when an African is playing this game, when a Kenyan is playing this game, the message you're trying to tell them can't possibly be the same that you're trying to tell someone from China. No shade in any way. But we can't ignore the fact that China does contribute a lot to the climate situation that we're currently in. And so I can tell the Kenyan through the game that things are really bad. This is how you adapt to the current situation. However, the same message doesn't make sense for the wider audience or someone who's in China or East Asia. because for them, they need to have a different message for their current situation. So these are some of the issues that you're probably likely to run into. However, just as we have limitations, if we're thinking about general goals that everyone can do, like planting a tree, then it makes sense that we try to reach as many people as humanly possible. Right, still sticking to the East Asia side of the world. When we work on hyper-casual games, as I've said, we make sure everyone wants to play this game, right? And East Asia is one of the toughest markets that can possibly be cracked when it comes to a mobile perspective. And some of the only genres of games that have been able to do it are number one, AAA games. Definitely Call of Duty is still big over there, and many other games in that space. But notably so on the mobile space, hyper-casual games are some of the only games that are still able to do this. I've highlighted the slide on the far left is not relevant. That's the US store, just to show some of the games that are doing well over there. But on the middle screenshot, we have China, and notably on the red dot is a game called Sandbox, and it's a hyper-casual game that was worked on with these same principles in mind. And the reason for this is, again, there is no race or gender attached to any of this media that is, to any of the characters or any of the design decisions that are in the game, and so anyone can be able to pick it up and move and play the game. On the last slide is the Japan iOS store, and it's more or less the same situation. We have Penguin Isle, which is among the top games over there, and then we have Rescue Cat. Worth mentioning is, in as much as we're trying to make sure that the player feels accommodated in whoever the character is, animals also tend to work really well. A good example is the penguin that we have over there. I don't have a reason for that. Maybe animals are cute, and people just love animals and pets and all that. Moving on to my last point, market testing, iteration, prototyping has to take place. This is very important because 43% of games in development are killed before they launch. That's huge, that's almost half. 75% of launched games hit peak revenue within 1 year. I can tell you, and anyone who's looking into the business of gaming, 1 year is probably not enough to recoup your entire investment. So if you're hitting your peak revenue in 1 year, that means probably you're not bringing in any positive income. 83% of games die within 3 years, and only 5% of games are supported beyond the 7-year mark. And so when we think about the green games that we are working on, it's very important that we have these numbers in mind. And very interestingly so, the message that the game has, there's no question about that. You can come up with a message and you can put it in a game, right? However, the vessel that's carrying the message is tricky business. You have to make sure that the vessel is fun, the vessel is interactive, and then you put the message onto it and allow it to travel. Let me repeat that. So if the message is there and we are solid on that, that's good. The vehicle that's carrying the message is the game. And so with all this in mind, and these are the numbers we have in games, it's very important that we market test, we do iterations, we prototype, and do all that as soon as possible. And coming back to my main point, games really have to be fun. That's the vehicle that's moving the message that you want to put forward. And so they have to be fun. There is no excuse why it should not be fun. Because in order for you to communicate anything effectively, you need to grab attention and you need to create stunningly beautiful experiences that will foster an environment for your message to be passed through effectively. It's really that simple. And, you know, on a personal level, maybe for all of us, some of the best games that you play, some of the best movies that you watch, some of those movies that leave you in tears, they take you through an insanely beautiful journey. And at the end of it all, they have your emotions, the palm of their hands, and they can do whatever they want. And so the games have to do the same thing, but at the very end, they're not leaving you crying. I mean, they can if they want, but they should be leaving you inspired to do a lot more for the climate that we all basically live in. And the message and the entertainment value as well should be symbiotic. If either one of them is overbearing on the other, the game loses that inherent feel that we want it to have. If the game is too entertaining, it's very easy to lose sense of what you're trying to communicate to the game. If the message is too strong, then probably the game is not as much fun, and so it has to be symbiotic for the player to truly have a good experience. As I wind up, when we think about games, we tend to think about it being a linear process, that you come up with an idea, pitch it to someone, get approval from someone else, work on a few designs, start coding, test it in the market, and release it. And it's very important that this is communicated, that truly it's not what it is. The vessel that's carrying the message undergoes a lot of repairs, a lot of iterations, a lot of changes that need to happen before it's put in the market. And so in reality, this is basically how it looks. I've used my free hand to draw because I'm trying to communicate that it's organized chaos. It's organized chaos, but I haven't touched on the last bit, which is deployment. So just to repeat again, the message is there and we are confident about the message we want to send forward. However, the vessel will probably have to undergo a lot of different iterations. The first iteration of the vessel may not do the job, and you cut it, go back, think of another mechanic, think of another idea that will probably communicate better, that will probably carry the message forward better. And you keep doing that and testing with as many people as possible. And then eventually you will have the perfect match between the vessel that's going to carry your message and potentially reach millions and millions of people out there in the world. These are all tricks and hacks that we use in hypercasual. And looking at the data that I've provided, it works really well. And so I'm only hoping that it has provided some sense of insight into ways that green games can potentially reach millions of people all over the world. And with that, thank you so much.
Thanks, Evans, for your time and such amazing lessons and insights. I think that the greatest climate action campaign in the world doesn't mean anything if it doesn't have an audience. And so being able to reach the millions is critical, and we think about the messaging, but also the mechanic is so important as well. So, who here knew that a #1 game around the world came out of Kenya, right? Pretty surprising, right? And so we firmly believe that talent is equally distributed around the world, but opportunity is not. And the Crazy Labs incubator, which you went through at the accelerator that happened with Carry First in Cape Town, is a great example of bringing youth from Kenya, from South Africa, from other countries, giving them the skills and the mechanics to be able to learn from the years of experience that a publisher like Crazy Labs have gone through, and then apply that to what you were already doing. And what's the result? #1 game in the world, right? Or at least 27 countries only, right? So, but thank you, Evans, for sharing. You're going to stick around for a little while?
Yep.
Perfect. So Evans is going to be around. We're going to answer questions. We're down to our last speaker. So I want to get her in. She's on the line already. So I'm going to welcome Sam up to make this introduction, and I'm just going to set up the TV.
Thank you. Evans, I just thought that was remarkable. So thank you for what you've done and what you're about to do. You should be really proud of what you've achieved in such a short time in your life. So power to you with what comes next. I want to introduce our Chief Digital Officer now, Sally. So we've got to send Sally Redman, who was really keen to be here but is unwell. So she's dialing in. She's in the city, and she is a really remarkable woman. So she has had a whole range of roles at a very senior level, working on tech and government, and now she's working for the UN Environment Programme and is overseeing all of our work as the Chief Digital Officer. So I said to Sally, what do you want to talk about? She said, I don't know, what do I want to hear about? And so we said, we set her a brief, which is to talk through what is UNEP's work looking to do on digital transformation? What does that mean for the UN's leading environment agency? What are the challenges that she is seeing out there, and what are the opportunities? And so Sally is going to join us just to give a very open introduction to what UNEP's trying to do on the wider digital space. Playing for the Planet is one of the flagship projects for UNEP's wider digital transformation work. And what we're looking to do is get learning from our work with the games industry and take it to music, take it to other sectors as well. So what we do at the UN is try and work on systemic change, think about how can we get the world to ladder up in a more powerful way to do the right things. And the games industry has been a remarkable partner to test concepts with and see what more we can do to change the world from the one we have to the one we want. So Sally, I've given you a bit of a red carpet to speak from, and I'll hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Sam. I hope you can all hear me. Okay, great. Good evening, everyone, and apologies for not being able to join you in person. Neck problems that are keeping me out. I need to be careful not to move too much because it hurts. So apologies for that. But I've heard great things about today. I only wish I could have joined you. And by the way, before I start, I have no idea where this background is from, and whether it's an active game or not. But if it's not, then someone please invent it, because I absolutely love this. I just love a space exploration game. You know, no monsters, no one chasing me, no time running out, no bounty at the end of it, just the good old boring space exploration where you just, you know, travel through space and explore new worlds. I just wanted to say that because it's not every day that I get to address a cool audience like yourselves who can actually make cool things like that happen. Right, so digital transformation at UNEP. As Sam said, Playing for the Planet is absolutely one of our flagship initiatives, and it's one of our more cooler activities that we do as well, so we're particularly proud of it. But it falls within kind of a continuum of things that we do. And for those of us not too familiar with UNEP, I do hope that some of you will be able to join us at UNEA, the UN Environment Assembly, which starts on Monday. We're actually showcasing some of your games at our physical exhibition, and we'll be hosting some of you to have a lunchtime presentation on Tuesday as well. So I hope I'm well enough by then so that I can meet some of you and get to play some of those games. Digital transformation at UNEP is a couple of years old, so it started before I moved last year. And it's what's called an enabling subprogram or an enabling function. At UNEP, we tend to think of the environment in terms of what we call the triple planetary crises. So we talk about climate change, nature, biodiversity, deforestation, and so on, and pollution and chemicals and adjacent topics. And when we talk about digital transformation, we work across all of these, but we also look at them from two angles or two sides of the coin, as we call it. One is how do we deploy new technologies in addressing those planetary challenges or crises, and the other is how do we make technology itself sustainable, and not just technology as technology, but uses of technology. So how do we use technology to enable and promote sustainable behavior, for example? So we have a number of initiatives along that continuum, and we group them into things that we implement ourselves. Examples of that are something called World Environment Situation Room, which we're building, and it's our giant data platform that's supposed to federate environmental and other type of data from different sources and build use cases on top of them. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes in detail, because this is something that I'm hoping we can work on together. The second initiative is called the Global Environmental Data Strategy. which is our attempt to make environmental data easy to access for everyone, but also interoperable and high quality, so that we can all benefit from it and extract as many insights and useful information out of it as we can. The second group are things that we enable. So this is capacity building in the digital space for UNEP staff and also for our member states. And it's also something called the UNEP Digital Accelerator Lab, which is, think of it as a typical incubator or accelerator function where we invest not just money, but time and expertise in nascent ideas around UNEP that we hope to bring them to production. So you'll see some of these at the at our physical exhibition at UNEA, where we're showing some of our earlier prototypes on things including our version of ChatGPT called Environment GPT, which is supposed to combat misinformation and disinformation around climate-related topics via ChatGPT-like interface, and many others, and we'd love to hear your input and feedback about those. And then the third group are things that we influence. So these are processes that are ongoing at the moment, like I'm sure you've heard about the UN efforts on AI governance, but also initiatives like digital product passports, which is around making sure that consumer information is available along the entire value chain of a product, so that consumers can make informed choices around the environmental footprint or based on the environmental footprint of the products they buy. Also things like digital public infrastructure and how do you make it available but also sustainable. So lots and lots of things, and of course live within the UN universe. And within the UN, we have one of the priorities of the current Secretary General is something called UN 2.0, or the Quintet of Change, as we call it. And these are 5 things that the SG set as priority for us to try and transform the UN and make it fit for the 21st century. So these are data, innovation, digital technologies, foresight, and behavioral science. And I think you can identify with quite a few of these that are relevant to your work. So I'm hoping that we can also partner along some of them. Now, let me give you a couple of my thoughts on how we could potentially work together or start thinking together. And of course, I'll try to make this as short as possible because I'm actually keener to hear from you. But on the implementation side, as we start building this World Environment Situation Room, which exists today as a proof of concept, it's a bit of an aggregator portal type thing, but we actually do want to build it as a true federated data platform. And one of, or some of the use cases we've been talking about are things like gamification of certain scenarios around the future. So how do we make what is essentially quite dry environmental data and information engaging and interesting and palatable for a general audience? And how do we make it possible for them to see possible future scenarios and see the variables that contribute to different futures, and be able to manipulate that and see the potential results, which then can enable planning. So this isn't just an actual game, although the game part is also a very interesting aspect of it, but we firmly believe that this can be a planning tool. It can be a very powerful communication and planning tool, even for policymakers. So for that, we need insights from behavioral science. From that, we need insights from design and development and how you actually make something engaging enough to be palatable to people. Another thing is, how do you change behaviors? How do you influence decisions? How do you move from I'm showing something that is best practice to I'm actually going to make someone make a different decision about one aspect of their life tomorrow? I talked a little bit about consumer information and supply chains and value chains and things like that. So how do you condense all of that information that you get across the entire value chain of a product into a score or a traffic light system or a small graphic that communicates to the user how environmentally friendly that product is? And then also, how do we feed back data and insights from games into the world of environment and data and decision making? So what are we learning based on how people interact with games in different age groups and in different geographies? And how do we benefit from that to make our solutions and to make our decisions more influential and more useful to people? So these are all things that I'd love to discuss with any of you that are interested. We're also planning to put together an advisory board for digital transformation at UNEP to advise us on our strategy, but also to do these kinds of things. So to play around with different scenarios and different ideas and see what we can build together and how we enrich the innovation process at UNEP, and also helping our member states develop similar processes. So I'm hoping that at least some of you and your companies will be interested in joining that. But in the meantime, I'm very keen to keep the conversations open and to exchange ideas and thoughts wherever possible, and starting from now. So I'm very keen to hear your questions and comments. And thank you again very much.
Great. Thank you, Sally. So I think there's some fairly big ideas we've heard. So environment GPT, what do we do about the governance of AI? How could we do more on behavioural science to see what people want and how we can meet that need? Then also, what could we do potentially on really thinking differently around product passports so people can see what they're buying, where it comes from, what difference it could make? So these are big themes, Sally, but also big opportunities. So just to open the floor, we've already had something on Climate Station, which I think speaks to some of the ideas you've been mentioning, Sally. But I think the floor is open to questions around what is it that UNEP could do to help you? What reaction do you have to these ideas? And who would like to ask a question? Okay.
Can you hear me if I speak? Should I come up?
Yep, thumbs
Yeah,
up.
great. So I think our last speaker kind of illustrated this example, but I work as a contracted filmmaker and curator at the UN. I've been doing it for 20 years. And I feel a lot of the times there are conversations about engaging the creative economy. It's about like big industries. It's about, the Xboxes and the PlayStations, which is great. But I would argue that there are a lot of amazing community-based artists who have brilliant ideas, but who don't always have that entryway. So right now, I'm part of Create 2030. We have like 8 artists here who are hip hop, music, filmmakers, etc. And I just feel sometimes independent artists have a harder time making the argument that we have value because institutions like other institutions. So we have, I can go on for, days talking about the creativity, the passion, the compassion, and everything. But I would just argue that in your UNEP innovation call, that there's some way that independence can also be considered as well as big business or big companies. Just like our previous speaker is a perfect example. He's Kenyan, newer in his career, but he was the #1 game. That's like the perfect example. So I guess it's more not a question, but just a favor or a request to consider creatives of all levels.
Sally, any thoughts on that? To keep the door open to people of all sizes and forms and shapes?
Yes, thank you very much. This is an excellent point. And you're right, institutions do like institutions, unfortunately, even though the people inside the institutions don't particularly like that, but such is life. However, there are ways around that. And at the moment, for example, desperately looking for a contractor, UX designer, to help us design some of these use cases that I talked about and make them as engaging and cool as we can make them. So if there are any designers out there looking to join us for a few months, even remotely, we'd be more than happy to. And these requirements in terms of applying as a consultant aren't anywhere near as stringent as trying to work with a company. But we do need to think of other avenues by which we can engage the wider community, especially of groups like independent artists and others. And I'm fully open to ideas there, even if it's just, a regular coming together of, all of us having a chat and exchanging ideas and seeing how we can possibly partner together. I don't have a specific solution off the top of my head, but except to say, yes, absolutely agree with you. And we do need to think together about a way around that. And thankfully, we're in Kenya, which is one of the most creative and forward-looking cities in Africa and quite possibly in the world. So we should be able to create a community, at least here, and then connect with like-minded people all over the world.
It's a good question.
Yeah, I also want to say, to argue on that, I do think that Playing for the Planet is doing that, right? We're bringing in also a lot of small studios and local things, but I was wondering if within UNEP there is, seeing that Playing for the Planet is working and is seen as a flagship initiative, are there plans to replicate that? Is really the work that's been done here taken, best practices shared? Is there the plan to do that with music or fashion or other industries? Or is this something where UNEP is saying this is a great initiative and it's a successful one, but we should not spread out to too many? I was just wondering what the plans are there, or if there are any plans.
Sally, do you want to go first, or shall I go and you come off the back of me?
Go ahead.
So I think Playing for the Planet has inspired the music industry to do more, and so we have been giving them advice around the kind of approach we've taken. And I also think what's interesting is the UN plays quite an interesting magnetic role to get people to do things they wouldn't naturally do, and can get people to play in a way that allows them to be genuinely collaborative, rather than anxious about the relationship they may have with people who are seen as competitors. So I would say, yes, I think Playing for the Planet could be a white label for other sectors. I think, yes, there are other sectors where we think we could make a difference, but there's just a judgment on our capacity and the ability for us to go breadth versus depth. And at what point do we hand off the work we've started so the industry is allowed to be able to move forward on its own? So I would say we are working with the games industry to learn from what's possible and to support the industry to be transformative, and then to explore how that learning can be taken to other sectors. That's the approach, as opposed to UNEP has decided that the games industry is everything that we want to do, because I don't think that's how we work as an entity. So I would say, yes, we can do more. We're already doing it with the music industry, and we're also talking to sport around what more sport can do, because we work on sectoral initiatives as opposed to just individual threads of companies. So Playing for the Planet plays to our strength, where there's a wider community of the many, of all different shapes and sizes, that can work and learn from each other, as opposed to working with one-off institutions or organizations, which we don't think is appropriate. It could be seen as being commercially advantageous to them to have a unique relationship with UN as an entity. So there's a whole load of really boring complexity I could go into, but I won't. But that's a rough summary of where I think we are. Sally, you may add more to that.
Thank you, Sam. I think you've covered it pretty much. So yeah, there's definitely nothing within UNEP that says, oh, this was nice, but let's never do it again. I think Playing for the Planet is a very interesting and very successful initiative. And as Sam said, we're trying to learn from it as much as we can. And I think it was during my first week at UNEP that that Sam started talking to me about the music industry. So I think we're definitely getting there. There will be parallels to the games industry, but not everything will be transferable. So we'll have to see what we can realistically achieve with our limited resources and what learnings we can port across. But there are already initiatives going on, maybe not in the same format as Playing for the Planet, but very much taking a sectoral approach to environmental topics like circularity, for example. One of the projects, so I talked about the Digital Accelerator Lab and how we invest in nascent ideas around UNEP. And one of, in my opinion, the coolest ideas is a project called Greenfluencing by one of our colleagues, which is essentially working with influencers across social media platforms to help probably younger people, but really anyone, make more informed choices around fashion decisions. So this is specifically to do with the fashion industry working through social media influencers to make sure that we disseminate the right information, but also make well-informed and sustainably responsible decisions. So we're trying to pick as many as possible of these to get into with, of course, quite limited resources. But yeah, yes, we think that the experience of Playing for the Planet certainly merits replicating across other sectors.
I think we only have one or two more questions left, but Jeff, on that?
Can you hear me?
Not very well.
Oh,
One up more.
okay. I was asking, I was seconding what Lisa was saying, and my question is, now that we have to come to summits so that we can be able to understand the opportunities that are there other avenues that we can look up to and we can be able to search for these opportunities without necessarily like waiting for example, you, Madam, to come and tell us where do we get this, especially UNEP accelerator program kind of like initiatives that are funding, because that we can be able to even plan ourselves. And secondly, which is with that, the final question is, in terms of circular economy, localization is the key. How do we balance the trickle down and the localization of all these ideas and everything that comes along? Is it is localization a requirement for you to fund accelerator programs, or what are the requirements?
Okay, that's a good question. Sally?
Thank you very much. I didn't quite get the second question. What was a little bit muffled when it arrived at my end. But let me answer the first question first, and then we'll discuss the second one. So in terms of knowing or finding out about these opportunities, one thing for individual consultants, of course, is to always keep an eye on the UNEP website, the Characters website, because and also our various social media accounts, because that's where we always advertise these opportunities. So if you have a look today, you'll find the UX designer role posted there. And we're hoping to post more of these in the next few months. But I think in terms of widening that scope a little bit, one thing that we'd love to do is create a bit of a community, starting at least in Nairobi. And I very much welcome opportunities on how we do that. Whom do we include? What format does it take? How do we then work together around and with the UN rules and processes, try and benefit from the local talent, and also giving them those opportunities to come in and express themselves. So if you have any ideas about how to create that community and how to make it happen, we're all ears. Like I said, at the very least, it should be a forum for exchanging information and ideas and getting to know each other, so that whenever there is an opportunity coming up, you can at least be added to a roster, and we can tap into your talents and abilities whenever we can. The second question, I wasn't quite sure I got it. Could you repeat it, or could someone who heard it please repeat?
I think I got it. I mean, I think I can answer it for you, Sally, which is, I mean, in terms of how we work locally, we're a normative agency. We work at the local level. We don't really do much out in countries. In some cases we do. And we don't do that much within cities, if we're really honest with you, because we are there to set the global policies for the world, as opposed to have implementation on the ground. We do make exceptions. And it sounds like Sally's just made one with the Nairobi community. And so I would say we agree with you that a lot of the solutions are context specific and culturally relevant. And so working with your feet in the soil of the ground that you're in, I think really can help difference. So I think, Sally, we might be knocking on the door at the end of day one. I think I might say thank you for your contributions, and good luck with your neck. And I think you're going to be seeing more people in this room in the next coming weeks and months. And thank you for taking the time to join us this afternoon. Okay. So Sally, I think will just be leaving us now. Lisa, you and I have the task of wrapping up today. You and I have spent a lot of time talking about how we're going to do that. So I thought what might be quite a nice way of doing it is just, with the person next to you, what is the one thing you took from today? There's a lot. I mean, I'm exhausted just with the amount of information that's just covered us. So just, what is the one thing you've taken from today? So take away your own takeaway by talking to the person next to you. And I'll give you 1 minute.
I felt no, but the difference is like the other of which stability the planet what are they doing
Okay. So let's hear from the room. Quick one thing from someone who wants to stand up and say something. Jane? Go, Jane. One thing, Jane.
I think one thing was obviously just being inspired by all the stories we've seen today, just being humbled by how many activations are happening in the gaming community and the different activities around us. It's made us reflect on sort of the actions that we've taken and we've sort of reinvigorated by how powerful it is and how we should take that feeling of our own small world and make a small difference when actually effectively there is such a vast impact just in this real life.
Thanks, Jane. Can also give us one thing. I might put someone on the spot. Gautam, one thing? Oh, did you?
I mean, my one thing is that just for me personally, this is so exciting to see this topic being discussed and to see that there's every single piece of content that's delivered today is so crucial to ultimately So it's great, again, for me, in the different spaces that I go to, just see all the people here that make a difference. And so there's a lot of sort of bubbling excitement that I'm trying to balance the tempo between getting too excited and just staying calm.
Right. Lisa, what's your one thing?
I think my one thing is that there's a potential gap between NGOs, environmental organizations, and the games industry who are both looking to do good but can't find each other necessarily very easily. And that could be something that we at Play for the Planet might be able to help with. I feel like there's a lot of good energy and willingness to do things and lots of ideas, but these two sides do not necessarily easily come together.
Yeah. I would say I think this has been the best day of me attending a conference. I go to probably more conferences than I should. I think the content today is probably one of the best days of programming that I think I've ever been to. I think it's been extraordinary. Like the quality of the contributions has been exceptional. So I just wanted to say a massive thank you for everyone that's spoken today. I think it's been great. The bar for tomorrow, Jane, is quite high. Fancy. And I just wanted to say, I feel like there's a question of what can Africa do to support Playing for the Planet, and what can Playing for the Planet do to support Africa, and what does that look like? We're going to Brazil later this year to go and talk about what we can do there. We're going to India to talk about what we can do there. But this is our home. This is where we're from, and so I think we need to honour our roots, which are very much in Kenya, to see what we can do, and then extend it out about what we can do in Africa. So I just wanted to say, on behalf of UNEP, thank you for everything that everyone's done in the room. Thank you for everything that's about to happen. And Jay, thank you, and Usiku, and Alice, and the whole team who've hosted us for day one. And I'm going to hand over to Jay to tell us about what's going to happen next. But thank you, everyone.
So wow. Sam didn't ask me my one thing, but I'll share with you. My one thing is just what an amazing community. I'm sure most of you will share the sense that being a Games for Good climate action developer is a lonely business. It is frustrating. It's banging your head against the wall constantly, trying to balance being fun and being serious and being broke and being creative and all these things. And to see that there are so many other people around the world who are struggling with the same things and coming up with just amazing solutions is, I don't know, relieving. It makes me feel good. And I'm so happy to have all of you here together. I also think that what we have proven today is that Nairobi is the perfect place to have done this, right? That there is just so much happening in Africa, from Africa, for Africa, and it truly is, day one. And I'm delighted that all of you were to experience this metaphorical day one and literal day one. It's so great. If today was about a lot of the why we should be doing this and the what is being done, tomorrow is about the how. And tomorrow we have an amazing workshop that Gautam and Jake are going to put on. We have some great panel discussions that Deb and others are going to facilitate. We have Unity coming to talk. We have Google coming to talk, Franny. So tomorrow's going to be a great day. So make sure that you come back and bring your friends because tomorrow's going to be an exciting day. But in the meantime, you have been troopers and you have really made it through today. And I know it got a little hot in the afternoon and I'm thankful for the rain this morning. Made it kind of a little better in the morning. And as your reward for having been so patient and such a great audience, we have lots of drinks tonight. We have an amazing Sudanese DJ. We have a fantastic Italian dinner, and we have some prizes. And I promised you a draw, and that's what we're going to do. So give me 30 seconds, and we're going to get the lucky spin all set up, and we're going to give away some prizes. We'll tell you about what we're doing. All right. So Alice, if we can bring up the prizes, and I will tell what they are. All right.
Yeah.
Do we do this high tech or what? All right. So first of all, I promised you that if you went to visit the kiosks and got to experience some of the actual climate games that are happening, you get the chance to enter in the prize. Thank you all for making the time to go upstairs and seeing the results of literally months or sometimes years of efforts that have gone into making those great games. I hope they have inspired you a little bit. Now, we have some great prizes, and keeping with the theme of African and climate action, they're very special prizes, and I'm going to describe each one as we give them. They are all local, and I hope you'll find quite special. So I'm going to start with the first one.
It's okay.
So this cute little rhino is made by an organization called Ocean Soul, which collects literally millions of discarded flip-flops from the beaches that wash up from the ocean, and they sort them into colors, huge piles. You cannot imagine how big these piles of flip-flops are. And then they have artists who sculpt them into amazing creatures and things. And they actually have a boat that they've made entirely out of flip-flops called the Flippy Floppy. It's a great organization. We're happy to support them. They're Kenyan, and it's called Ocean Soul, S-O-L-E. And so the winner of this amazing rhino is... Can I get a drum roll? Dorothy Orino. Dorothy here. But you have to hug him and love him and call him Dorothy. By the way, the rule is if you're not here, you don't get it, we spit again. All right?
Yeah.
Okay. The second prize is a laptop bag made by an organization called Roka. Roka, I can show the logo. It's like the Price is Right. Okay? Roka actually stands for the two founders of the organization, Robert and Kamal. They're based in Mombasa. They take, this is so cool. They take, can I see one out the window? No, I don't think so. There's one there. They take billboards after the campaigns are finished, and they take down the vinyl from the billboards, and then they recycle them into backpacks and duffel bags and laptop bags. And then they do really cool artwork on them. They're made 100% out of recycled billboard vinyl. And it's such a cool organization. They run a workshop at the coast, employing all kinds of opportunity youth, giving them jobs, teaching them skills. It's a great organization. We're, again, very happy to support them. So the winner of this laptop bag is... Drum roll, please. Noor. Is Noor here? Noor's here. Dennis. Sorry, the last second, Dennis. There you go, Dennis. Awesome. Next one. So this cute little zebra. is from an organization called Kanana Knitters. They're based in Nakuru, and it's a collective of women who they buy wool from local sheep. It's all fair trade. They dye the wool using completely natural organic dyes. And then they knit them, and they have all kinds of patterns. They teach the women how to knit them, and then they make their money from knitting these things, mostly at home, and then they bring them together and they create cute little characters. And this one is a zebra, and I love him, and I hope I win. Okay, and the winner is, drum roll please. Salim! There you go. Salim is part of our incubator and is an amazing part of the GDC. So there you go, Salim. So if there's any one sort of symbol of Kenya that is well known, it's the Maasai. The Maasai wears is one of our tribes. And the Maasai are famous for wearing their red, what's called a shuka, as a cloth that wraps them. And what's interesting is that actually it's not even original sort of Maasai, but the belief is that it came from the Scottish who came to Kenya about 100 years ago, and then it sort of just caught on. So this is a really nice Maasai shuka, again, locally made with fleece on the inside, because we recognize that many of you probably don't live in the Nairobi environment, and these are so warm and comfy, and so nice for sitting by a fire. So we have a fleece-lined shuka as the next prize. Drum roll, please. Thank you, Joshua. Joshua here? Yeah, there you go. We'll will you tomorrow? There you go, there you go. Then the last one of tonight also comes from Mombasa. This is from a woman named Amal, who is part of the Swahili Pot Opportunity Youth from GYN. And she makes teas, these amazing spiced coastal teas. And she did it at home, and then we kind of helped her, we didn't help her, but GYN helped her make it into a business. And she got packaging, and she got distribution, and now she's a wonderful entrepreneur. And these are so good. I have this at home, and it smells amazing. So, last prize of the night, Amal's tea. No, I thought we were moving. No, all right, there you are. All right, come on up. There you go. Now, if you didn't win, don't feel too bad, because I have two things for you. Number one, everybody gets a going home prize. You get a famous Kenyan-made local kikoi that you get to use, the sarong for those of you from the West, locally made, and they come with this little Africa keychain that is made from an organization called Plastiki Rafiki that pays people in the slums to collect waste plastic bottles and then turns them into new products that then get sold. And they run now 14 workshops across East Africa, creating hundreds of jobs and lots of economic power from waste plastic and cleaning the environment at the same time. And so we asked in Mathare, which is one of the local slums in East Nairobi, the workshop in Mathare made 100 of these for us, and every one of the Kikois has a Playing for the Planet Nairobi 2024 tag, a Plastiki Rafiki, Africa keychain, and your very own fancy Kikoi. So you'll get this as you go out at the end of the night. Everybody gets one of these. And all the prizes that you saw earlier, we have a second set of them that we're going to do at the end of tomorrow. So you get a second shot. All right? In the meantime, thank you, everybody, for making it through the day. I welcome you upstairs. We have amazing food. We have drinks. There's beer and wine. We're going to very rapidly get rid of all of these chairs. DJ Andy's going to come in. We're going to put on the disco lights. And I encourage you to get to know each other, network, find opportunities, and have a great evening. So thank you so much for coming today. If I can ask for everybody to move upstairs, that'll allow us to pack up all the chairs and clear this area down here. And if I can ask all the super staff to come around and help us with the chairs, we can make quick work of this. Thank you.